I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Three main points from open government in this debate. First one, why we think that AI will eventually, inevitably, be part of the decision-making process, and it's better to be in a transparent and open manner and visible to everybody else. The second one, why AI is simply going to make better decisions than human politicians that are going to lead to better outcomes for those countries that elect them. And finally, why we need to let human time to prepare for AI that are going to be in the future, and it needs to be exposed now for them to do so. But before, so framing of what we mean by AI running for office and how it's going to work. First of all, we mean only public office. That means no judges, no other types of boards, etc. Purely elected politicians. Second, we are going to limit it, as we have fiat, to no proprietary tech, only open source, open available tech, so it's not owned by any company or firm or any other institution that can lay claim to it in any way, shape, or form. Third, it's going to be air-gapped, meaning it's going to be completely disconnected from outside, and it's only going to communicate through whatever screen it has on the machine, or by talking to other humans, etc. who are interacting with it physically, but it's not going to be connected to the internet, it's going to be connected to other things direct, so it's going to limit access to things. And finally, it's only going to be, it's not going to be informed within that questions being asked in a campaign context or in a context of actual governing. So it's going to be asked all the questions in the same way. It's all interactions are going to be the same from its perspective, meaning it doesn't know whether it's campaigning, elected, or what is it doing. After we're done with this framing, let's talk about whether an AI is actually going to win. Because I know a lot of you have used ChatGPT or at least tried it, and you know it's not quite good enough to actually win public office right now. Yes? We think we have to be realistic about this. It's incapable of actually combining words, spoken word, visuals in order to create the empathy needed. It's incapable of consistency and remembering things. It's incapable of doing so now. And I think it will be very obvious if anybody tried to run ChatGPT for office. I don't think it's going to win right now. What I think is likely is that AI is eventually going to get much better. I think it's eventually inevitable. It's going to far surpass human capabilities. That's understanding why it's inevitable it's going to do so. First of all, we can just see the realistic rate of improvement it had in the real world. It is getting much better. But on the second level, we think it's just going to be designed for a purpose, right? Humans are designed to be very weird, very survivable monkeys. The AI is going to be designed to be a politician, so it's going to be fit for a purpose. But I think finally, it just has much more computing resources and access to much greater compute than any human ever had, right? No matter how many neurons you can have more in an AI. Sure, clarification.
When you're saying he's going to be programmed to be a politician, you mean he's going to be programmed to get elected, right?
No. I mean he's going to be programmed in order to govern, right? This is the purpose of politicians. And we think we have explicitly told we're not telling him whether we're asking him campaign questions or governing questions. So unlike normal politicians, he is not making a separation, right? He's even more honest in that sense than any other politician you're ever going to get. Right? Now that we accept he's going to get better, let's understand what does it mean for us. On the first level, the fact that it's going to get better means that he is going to eventually have significant influence, because every country is going to use it to make key decision-making questions, and every candidate running for office is also going to use it for key decision-making processes. First of all, because just out of pure competition, right? Once it gets better, it's going to allow you to do much better than you can do otherwise if you use it and not do so. Even if it's just getting as good as humans, which is what it has to relatively do to get elected, it's just able to multitask, to handle lots of things at the same time, to go through a lot more source material and read a lot more information than any human can. So eventually you're going to use it. And regardless of that, you're also going to be afraid of not using it, right? Because you're afraid other people will use it. Your competition, your competitors, other countries, so you're going to be using it all the time. Because also, and finally, because we just want to do the best. And we're using AI will be the best. And everybody wants to do the best for the country, and therefore they're going to do so. And I think from this we have to understand that AI will be highly influential, because it's going to be hard to say no to AI on many issues, right? On many issues you're not certain as a politician yourself, and the AI is going to give you an answer, and it's easy to go to the answer you have. But then it shifts the blame from you. You're not taking the decision. You're not overruling the AI that you believe is smarter than yourself. You're letting him decide. So I think eventually, if we let them be advised to going to decide, we might as well make it the truth, right? Instead, make it explicit and observable when an AI is going to be making decisions, because A, it's giving people the ability to actually choose who is making the decisions for them, right? It's letting them know that an AI is making decisions, but do they want it to make decisions or not? And that's the specific AIs they want to make decisions, rather than politicians acting as a go-between and choosing what happens for them, being in debt to proprietary companies, using stuff that are not tested, it's not open source, nobody has access to check it's working well, not necessarily secure. They're going to be in a much better position when A, they know the truth, and B, they are being much more confident of its security. Second, let's understand later why the AI is going to do much better than humans at governing. We think it's going to happen on a few levels. The first one, we think it's just going to be much, much better decisions on every individual issue. We think it's going to come from two different levels. The first one is biases. We think there's much less bias from the experiences it had because it has access to a much greater range of experiences, much wider range of experiences than anything else. And before anybody tells us, yes, it's going to perpetuate existing racism, when anybody making it open source and available, if it does that, other people will find out and they will publicize it and it will not get elected any more than racist politicians get elected today. Sure.
AI code and the way it thinks is not understandable even by their own developers. So open source doesn't mean anything.
Okay, we think that it allows you to ask them the questions for everybody in the world. So you can ask them what he's going to be racist, you can try and test them and understand it. But second of all, if you can explain to you why he's making a decision, nobody is going to elect him because he's just going to be extremely unattractive candidate because you're not going to understand why he's proposing things, he's not going to be convincing, he's not going to be electable. So we think it's just very irrelevant that the AI can explain himself to at least a reasonable degree that the human can understand. But we think beyond the fact he's going to have much less biases, he's just able to access a much greater amount of information, right? So instead of getting summary reports of just the high-level information what every decision has to make, right? Instead of just getting what's the status report of all hospitals in average, it can look at the individual letter of everything at once and make a truly optimized decision, right? It can actually reach all the levels of the decision in order to make it significantly better. But finally, we're just going to get much smarter than humans, and therefore it's just going to make better decisions regardless of anything else, just by being a smarter version of us. And finally, I think it's just significantly less corruptible because it doesn't have as desires and other things that humans have that make them very prone to significant amounts of corruption. Finally, we think it's important that we get used to AI decision making in the public sphere now when AIs are very much imperfect, meaning that we can understand them, meaning we learn to question them. We learn to ask why they are doing things and expect a reasonable explanation. If they don't give us a reasonable explanation, we assume they are being stupid and not we are being stupid, because right now this is very much likely to be true. However, if we wait for significantly later on, when AIs get much better and we have no ability to second guess and we don't fear to question them, then we are not going to be able to build a human tolerance to interaction and for how to treat them in society in order for us to actually be able to operate in a world in the future in which we are going to be prevalent on either side of the house. For all those reasons, we call you to propose.
It is actually the fifth time, I mean, like, how will I call it? Like in a final of something which is only for like people, something like freshmen or whatever. It's the fifth time I'm in OO. I'm really happy, like I really hope that this time I'm actually going to win it. Let's go. Okay. So first, we think that the point of people in public office is not to be the best, best in terms of professionality. We think we have lots of people with this is like their job, and here we have no problem, call it a counterpop if it means something, to allow all politicians to use as much advisors. We have no problem that they will actually say in their campaign, this is the AI that I'm using, this is something which is as transparent as OG wants. I'm generally, like in most reasonable case, I say I will listen to him, but if he will do anything weird, I still have my own agenda and opinion, and I will work according to that. We think at this point that really we do think that if you want someone who is really professional, we really don't know why it has to be the person who is being elected. I think it deals with most of OG, and I will let Jessica to just treat with the rest in her speech. I will have 3 points. First of all, I will we think the actual point of those people are really to just, we think the most important thing is that they are not going to be extremely populistic, and they will be accountable for the action, and that they are not going to be corrupted in all sorts of way. My first point is going to be why they're going to be extremely populistic and unaccountable, and then why we just think that in terms of there's a lot of option to corruption and shitty things. Let's go. Okay, so to my first point. We think that those AIs are very likely to be trained to be as populistic and to come to the most common denominator. We think this is likely only because those are the ones which are likely to be actually elected. Those are the ones that most people are actually going to listen to. We think that The way it's likely to happen, there are going to be like all sorts of companies which are going to actually compete on this like job of, for each public office. Each of them are going to write, I don't know, thousands of codes which are actually going to compete, and the only one that people are actually going to listen and treat seriously are the ones which are going to like say things that they mostly believe in and seems to them like I don't know, like most persuasive. We think that those stuff are usually going to be quite shitty, exactly things such as I'm going to lower taxation, all of those like usual, I don't know, all of the things that we see today, just more of like being extremist and say that some minorities are very, very bad, all of those kind of stuff. Why do you think that those AI are going to do much more of that? First of all, we think that they're just not going to physically live in the country afterwards. What does it mean? We think that as a politician, if he actually do a certain action, a lot of groups can actually make a lot of pressure on him. They can do, I don't know, protest outside of his house. They can say, even though we are, I don't know, not like a majority and we cannot do much, we can still pressure him. Secondly, we think there are just a lot of people that that a real politician know in life and know that he might make like a very, very big damage to them. We think that as an AI like seriously doesn't care and he will do like in the most extreme way what really going to give him most votes. We think that thirdly, we think he can usually, exactly because of the argument made by OG, hide beside like some extreme, like very professional, to seem extremely like very professional, and that people are going to like really trust him because they know that AI is something which is very smart, because they know that AI have a lot of knowledge that they don't have, and exactly because of that, they might like listen to him and give this thing a lot of power. We think that the reason this is so dangerous is because it can really like use the most like extreme policies that are going to hurt a lot of people, and then we literally cannot do anything to stop it. We have no, at the moment that he actually got the position, all of the mechanism that we used to have in politicians doesn't really apply in this case. We think that the amount of care they have for the country is literally zero. They were only trained to actually like convince people and get as much power as they want. Let's get to my second point. We think that even if you don't buy all of that, we do think that there is just really a certain problem of you cannot know who literally wrote this code. Yes, it was an open source code, but exactly as mentioned before, you cannot, you have no way to know exactly how we think and what is the way it operates. Why do you think, and on which data, or like it learned, etc. Why do you think this is so crucial? We think that a lot of rich people, which are the people which are going to write those codes, eventually the code which are going to be most efficient is the one which is going to win. And if I'm a very, I don't know, and we think that extremely rich people have all the interest to actually write all of those codes and send them to actually be elected. And if you have like tons of public positions, you have, I don't know, 120 I don't know, parliament members you have for every city, it mayor, all of those people, and you have no idea who actually wrote those codes. We think that this means that people can actually send, I don't know, like public officers with an agenda which will do something which seems reasonable up to some times, but at the moment they will be with power, they are going to be extremely corrupted, or and actually like give benefits to whoever wrote it. Before we continue, we'll take
What is the difference between this and a politician written by a rich people who pays for his campaign to convince the most people?
No, so we think there are a few differences. First of all, you know exactly who is the politician, and you can send him to jail. It's a real thing. You think you cannot do it for an AI, so the AI doesn't have any risk. I can write thousands of those codes. You cannot, I don't know, if in an alternative world you cannot duplicate 1,000 people, then that's great. But that's not the world. We think that secondly, we think that politicians usually know what was their past, what they used to do. Usually take people who invested all of their life for the country. People which you know are, I don't know, that really care about it. We think that for the AI, you cannot know what is his past and what he did, and it will actually prove by that he is very likely to be someone who cares about your country. We think that but that really thirdly, the only people which are going to have enough resources to write them are automatically people with corrupted idea and incentives. We think this is not the case with human beings. which are usually being sent. We think that rather than that, just in terms of like security and safety, it's going to be extreme. There are going to be a lot of people with incentives to actually hack into those systems. And we think that as much as we would like to protect them, we think it's just going to be impossible because there are going to be so much companies with high interest to actually hack them, and to actually steal a lot of like secret information, and to use those like officers for their purpose from all of those reasons.
3, 2, 1. 4 final parts of my speech. First of all, I'm going to impact our point. I'm going to explain what are the actual impacts on the day-to-day life of citizens of what we explained to you. Second of all, I'm going to do a few rebuttals to OG's case. 3, I'm going to weigh over it. 4, I'm going to take CO's extension. CO, please prepare an extension and take it from here. Let's start from impacts. What are the actual impacts of having an AI that makes better decisions, who actually knows and has much higher intelligence than a random politician? First of all, we think that the day-to-day decisions he makes are much better, meaning he knows much better what to put in the hospital because he can analyze much more like things in order to understand where this hospital has to do. 2, he knows how he knows much better how to like decide where does do you need to put some money, or where do you not have to put this money from the budget. He knows much better because he understands much more like what this money is actually does, because again he can analyze much more information, much more data, and have much more knowledge about how actually his actions are going to affect the daily lives of day-to-day citizens. 2, he can do multi-factor analysis, meaning that when he makes economic decisions, when he decides what the economy is going to look like, how much taxes are we going to take, he can make extremely complicated multi-factor analysis that will actually explain to him what are the impacts of every decision he makes, meaning he can actually understand things that a normal human cannot, like the economy, like things that a normal human just cannot understand because of their scale. We think that he's going to have like a better investment possibility, right? Because we think that the government also invests because it wants to increase its wealth, meaning that as an AI, he can do like this investment much better. 3, we think that his ability to optimize the welfare state, meaning to understand where those budget in the welfare state go, who does need it actually, who doesn't need it, where does it go to waste, what parts of the budget are just like there to fund things that are not needed. The AI, because of his ability to take much more factors and on much higher level of analysis, can do all those stuff. So, but what do first government trying to tell us? So they tell us, first of all, the AI is now going to make bad decisions. Why? Because he is like a populist and corrupt. We have two main problems. 1, this is just extremely unlikely in the long term, right? Because if I make extremely bad decisions as an AI, time and time again, this means that even if I was elected from promising people taxes and bad things and stuff like that, over time, people see that their lives are not getting better, their lives are shit, they don't feel that they're getting better, meaning they're just going to elect this AI out of office, meaning that in the long term this is not likely. Secondly, we just think this is not symmetric, this is extremely symmetric, because as much as an AI has the incentive to promise all those stuff to people, the politician has the same incentive exactly, meaning that we don't see any difference here. 2, they try to say, oh, but the AI can actually hide behind like the people that make a decision can hide behind the professionality of the AI. No, he makes professional claims, and then people will not know when to believe him and when to not. Notice that it happens on both sides, both when the opposition and the coalition do that, right? Because if we have an AI running to office, when one AI says, oh, I understand this, here is a very complicated explanation, why am I correct? The other side's AI can explain, no, here is a very good explanation why you are not correct, why all the things you are saying are just lies, meaning that you get this on both sides. You don't get one side that can hide behind a very complicated explanation when the other side cannot fight it. 4, they try to tell us, oh, but you don't know who wrote the code. First of all, how many people on the day-to-day life that you meet know who are the 120 members of Knesset? This is completely symmetric because nobody knows who are those people, right? And secondly, we just think that this is like all the things that we already explained to you in our mechanism can actually help to mitigate it, right? Because if the AI makes like extremely like racist or very biased decisions, you have a Supreme Court that is still comprised from human people who can still see that he can make corrupt or racist decisions, and this Supreme Court is going to be pressured by the public to change the decision, to overrule it, just like we see today. Because when today, like politicians make extremely weird reforms, like the Supreme Court is pressured to overrule them, meaning that we don't think that all those bad things happen on our side. Why do you think that what we explained is much more important than what you get from all those like corruption and stuff like that things? One, we think that it's just much more decisions. The amount of things that we all agree on, the amount of things that are objectively good, are the giant bulk of things that politicians do, right? Where to put schools. Everyone agrees that a place that needs a school needs to be built a school there, right? Everyone thinks that a place that needs to, like, that there are a lot of sick people there, or a place that does not have enough health infrastructure, there needs to be built a hospital there, right? We think that everyone agrees that certain like poor people or very unwell, like people who are unwell, need to get help from the government. Meaning that the huge amount of things we just all agree on. The only thing that we don't agree on, the things that the politicians like argue of, are a very small percentage of those things. On our side, you get those decisions made much better. On their side, okay, you get the corruption here, the later corruption there. These are small and very not reoccurring decision, when on our side you get reoccurring good decision every day on the day-to-day lives of citizens. Two, we think that the effect of citizens is much bigger, right? Because the decision we are talking about, the decision that talk about the day-to-day lives of citizens, the infrastructure, the building of hospitals, of public schools, are the things that citizens care much more about. They prefer those things over like corruption of the government. Okay, so some politician will get a bit more money. This is not the thing that the average citizen voter cares about. The things that the citizen cares about much more are that his life will be better. The decisions that the IA makes professionally are much better. Before I move on, extension, please.
Yeah, like a smart man once said, should an autonomous car learn how to drive from a data set of drunk drivers?
Okay, so what they're trying to claim is that the dataset is going to be bad. So Roee, first of all, already explained to you why this is unlikely, because one, we think that you have an open source, meaning you can know where this AI gets those things from. Two, we think that again, AIs are going to be competing against each other to those positions of power, meaning that only the AI that in the end makes the best decision, meaning that he was based on a good source material, only he will win in the end. Three, we just don't think that all this point about, oh, like random people are going to be generating AIs, like, and you don't know who is the person standing behind this AI. We think this is extremely unlikely. Why? Because we think people are not going to trust like a random people on the net, on the internet that put an AI and elect him for office. People are only going to trust trusted big corporations who make AI, who have a lot of knowledge about it. Only their AIs are actually going to be successful in being elected. A few more ways. Four, we think that we are logically precedent, right? Because we think that the ability of the AI to make the ability of the population to getting used to the AI, to understanding how to use it correctly, to be used to the fact that you can overrule it and stuff like that, is logically precedented to actually working well with it. I'm out of time. Logical precedence, yeah.
So, 3 main points in my speech. A, why we can achieve all of the impacts of first governments with the countercrop they didn't bother to answer to. 2, why even in the best case scenario, when the AI would really like to govern and won't be corrupted by China or Russia or any other country, we still get shittier policies and then awaiting in the long term. First, few rebuttals to open government. A, we agree with them that it's fine that the politician will use the AI. We agree with them that it's fine that the politician will ask the AI what he should do exactly on, as Roee said in his contract, exactly on the decisions they want. How many statistics they need, where to be the hospital, or any other problem that the human knowledge simply cannot abide to. And this is how you get the impact of people getting to know the AI as well. Few problems with what they are saying. They're saying, listen, anyone can come to it now. No, only the people who are rich and privileged enough to go and study coding can access to it. What does it mean? It means that the whole idea of your whole ideas of politics is going to be built by a certain elite that manipulates the simple people in order to get what policies that benefits them. What they're suggesting is anti-democratic and do not give the clearance that we get on the comparative when you can dig into a politician past, you can go, you can find what you want, and he has an accountability afterwards. Regarding the point of corruption of the second government, they asked us what is the difference between a corrupt politician and a corrupt AI. The easiest form to access. They're saying it's an open code, which means that any person can access this AI, which means the only thing you need is one skilled hacker from China or from Russia that can access this code. Honey, am I correct? I really, really hope so. That can access it, or any other person with malicious means. On the comparative, the politician probably has a lot more surveillance on him because it's much easier for a person to understand understand when someone is given bribe to a politician. The politician literally has something to lose. The politician can go to jail. Well, comparatively, the AI do not give a fuck, and he has nothing to lose. Continue to our point about why these policies are going to be bad. They're saying, no, the AI wouldn't be programmed to get elected. But to be programmed to govern and to be programmed to be a politician, you will have to have some government, some coding to be elected. Moreover, you have to have some coding to be elected in order to be there in the first place, because people do not make those decisions based on logic. People make those decisions based on feelings, which means the AIs that are going to be elected are going to be the AIs that come to the feelings of the people. Why is it likely this AI is going to be elected over a politician? As they're saying, he's great at running statistics, which means he's great at running a statistic that comparatively the politician cannot run if he do not have an AI, and creating the most populistic message that's going to get him elected. B, he do not have a past that is relevant to government like politician. He never cheated on his wife. He never had a son outside of marriage, which makes him more attractive to people. C, people have an innate belief that an AI is smarter than them, and he can do it better. When he comes to you with a populistic message and he says, I'm extremely smart and I know how to enact it, they're going to believe him and therefore choose him above the politician. Why the decision he's going to make are going to be bad? Yes, we agree that maybe the decision that strictly based on math are going to be better, but the thing, this is an impact you can get on both sides. What decisions are going to be worse? A, we think that the AI will govern with the idea of what most of the people wants and not what is better for the people. How does it look if most of the people wants to go to war now, like for example, if this AI is elected in Israel, where there's a majority of people from the right, the AI doesn't stop and wait, there's a human life on the line, or I have to save some right and some policy. The AI says that's what most of the humans want. This is the best policy to make. B, minorities. We think there's no way to code the AI. Yes, extension.
We are going to prove why you're having better representation and more efficiency in these small city council members, which is the most important party in this debate.
Okay, we think that the small city council member also represent minorities, also make decisions which affect human lives, like where to put the budget, even if it's a smaller, poorer neighborhood that not the whole city wants. We think that the only likely way this AI is going to govern, and what he's going to say as the best government, is as we see, the democratic way, the most common denominator that most of the people wants. What does it mean? A, he has no subject to stop and look at human lives. B, he does the populistic things that most of the people wants, lot of times hurting minorities and hurting people on the way. Why is the most important thing in this debate? A, those populistic ideas, even if they're bad, are a lot of times have long-term effect. If most of the people want to take taxes down, and I decide to take taxes down, this is a damage that's going to be for years. Second, we want our politicians to have respect for human life. All these reasons, yes.
As I said in my exposure POI, which was not super related to, we are going to explain why A, the city council members are the most crucial part of our elected officials and why they're the most important people in this debate. B, why tomorrow we are getting two separate things. One, much better representation of the people, which is an important principle in democracy, I think we could all agree. And second of all, why we are getting much more effective decisions that the people actually want, which goes to representation. We're just going to go into it right away. Before that, the OO's counterprop, which, give me a split second. The counterprop that you could just use the AIs for advice and all that other shit is going to be directly rebutted in the fact that I'm talking about the representation, which requires the AIs to be making the final decisions, which doesn't exist in your world. Okay, now, going into the lower offices, blah, 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 I really hate this organization pattern at the moment. What gives legitimacy for an elected official to make any decisions? Very basic analysis. I know it's junior analysis, apparently relevant in this debate. We have a representative democracy. We are trying to represent the wants of the people in the most efficient way possible. As in, we don't want every human to vote on every matter because it's not practical. So we vote for elected officials. The elected officials are supposed to represent our opinions and our ideas to the best of their abilities as they do. Why does this not, okay, they want to execute the desires of the officials. Why are current officials not good representation, specifically in city council? Because OG makes a bunch of claims about the professionalism of the AI and they know what they're doing, but the more high-up politicians are professionals in their field. As in, you're correct that you will get more professionalism, just the impact of how much that's important is a lot less relevant with higher-up officials because they are professionals, they hire other professionals, they are these people. Who are city council members? City council members are members of the community that live in their community, that they have their day job, they have their other shit, they run for a private office. It's usually the same member of the booster club that's supporting the sports system in the school who has a kid in the school, and they are spending a few hours every week on city council members, hearing different projects, hearing different ideas, running with it, etc. It means that they usually run unopposed or barely opposed by random members of the community. They don't actually have to have that many opinions on what they're going to do, just a basic, vote for me, I'm your only option, little stands outside on their houses, and or a few super minor running campaign things. They have personal biases, as in they're making decisions about where the new school's going to be, where the budget is separated, what are the actual decisions? School budget, parks, municipal fund and emergencies, which hospitals we're going to have, which roads we're going to repair, where the stop sign is going to be, all the basic functions that actually affect the average citizen's life on a day-to-day basis. They care about where their kids are going to play in the park. They care about the safety of the park. They care about who's getting hired in their education system. They care about who's going to be the counselor, the social worker that is working with their kids on a day-to-day basis. They care about all these impacts because it's something that affects them a lot more, rather immigration rights and a high tag about what Trump's doing about building a fucking wall. Now, what we are doing, what we are creating in this society is we are creating people who have very natural biases. We're not talking about deep corruption or whatever. We're talking about people who have their kids in this fucking school or don't have their kids in this school. They personally use that road or they don't personally use that road. These are things that invite the minute details of their everyday life that will create even a subconscious bias if it's not something they deeply care about. Now, why is the AI incredibly different right now? This is the comparative and this is essential. We are not saying that we're going to have one AI programmed by one human being. This is your only option. Choose this or your city council member. We are going to have AIs programmed. Wolff did a very impeccable mech that seemed to be slightly ignored on the topic of when you ask the AI questions, it's going to answer exactly what it's going to do in the same place of policy and campaigning. You are claiming that they're going to do just populist ideas. I am claiming that if they're actually going to follow through on their populist ideas, and it's what every member of the society voted for, that is representative democracy and that is what's important. It is not up for us to decide that the little people don't know what they want and they don't actually get to make decisions. Now, because the AI, has to be incredibly honest, you're going to have different factors doing different things. You have target codes. You say, we want you to prioritize human rights over this. We want you to prioritize economy over this. We want you to prioritize this over this. And that is what is going to be clearly programmed inside the AI itself. What does that mean? It means that the citizens know exactly what they're voting for. For me, my priority is that I have good infrastructure or I care more about immigrants' rights, which means I am going to vote for the AI who has a very clear set priority that they care about immigration rights above other things. becomes very clear-cut, very clear-set, and I'm actually voting for the AI that represents my personal preference and what I want from my leadership as I elected them. People say that I should vote for Okay. Now, the second factor that is incredibly important is that the people in the city council do not have the time to put in enough resources in order to make the proper decisions. As in, pretend you're the most unbiased human being ever. Fucking cold book, doing exactly what they said they're gonna do down to a T. They have a few hours a week. They have another job. They have another life. They have kids to go home to. You cannot make proper decisions on where you're going to invest your budget, how you're going to spend the city council budget, what's really important in emergency, predict the future emergencies in the coming year to properly calculate the budget of what's going to happen. Do all the different policies that essentially make the functioning of the city, of the city and the town and the municipality much, much higher in a way that wouldn't exist otherwise. As in, what did we actually prove here? We proved twofold very, 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 very importantly. One, we're having more representation of the people's desires, and P, the people's desires are actually able to be implemented to the best of the AI's ability. As in, it's not a fallible human who doesn't really know what he's doing, trying to implement what he said he might run off of. We have an AI, clear target functions, I'll take it in a second, clear target functions, clearly know what they're doing, clearly doing exactly what the people said they should do, yes?
Politicians will have to continue living in the city or country and face the consequences of the things he did. This is why it's so important that the AI will be supervised by a human who is accountable.
The AI is being supervised by all humans in the country as their constituents. As in, when Trump does something wrong, humans outlash, and then he starts talking about how he fucked up, how he didn't actually fuck up, and it's all fake news. When someone thinks that the AI did something, a huge mass investigation goes down, the AI gets temporarily shut down, they figure out if it was hacked, they figure out if it's actually representing the interests of the people. If it was, then it is allowed to continue based on the fact that it was doing what it was told to do in the first place. If there is a malfunction in the AI, it is much easier to turn off an AI machine than it is to imprison a human being and get them out of office. You are pretending that corrupt politicians are the most easy thing to get rid of in the world. I'm sorry, corrupt politicians are an everyday part of our life. All these white, awful people that you're saying are controlling all these AIs, these are the people currently lobbying and actually controlling the politicians, almost word for word. These are the people that in the big scheme of things are actually controlling the politicians. In the smaller municipality where it's actually affecting day-to-day lives, the people representing are making worse decisions, not real representative decisions, etc. We are in a democracy, we are in a representative democracy. Representative democracy is straight up about representing the people. We have proven without a shadow of a doubt that the AI is more capable of proving the needs of the individual people in the community than an elected politician ever could. We should give the humans the options of choosing them. If they want the person, let them choose it.
We're going to start in 3, 2, 1. Both parties on both of the sides agree that politicians will use AI for information anyway. Hence, in cases which are standard, day-to-day decisions that already are precedented, that have some sort of objective answer to what will just solve the problem for most people, it's probably going to be done anyway, right? It's probably going to be made according to the AI and the human will choose the same. The place where there actually is a delta, right, where there actually is a difference between the decisions are places that are new, uncertain situations, right? That's usually where we need humans to actually make decisions and not just follow protocols or listen to experts/AI. And we will show you why exactly there, the place where decision making is most needed in new, uncertain situations, the AI inherently fails. So my main point is going to be why the AI is simply not adaptive enough to deal with anything, with new things that arise from the job. Just like Roee said kind of in his POI, at the end of the day, the AI is only good to do what his data set trained him to do, and when the reality does not compute and is not the same as the data set, when it is not the thing we wanted, the AI just does not serve our purpose. Before I get to that, a few quick points of rebuttal. So we hear that the AI will be honest and finally represent the people, right? A few problems with that. First of all, nobody said that AI needs to be honest, okay? I think we talked about it enough in the first house, but just like ChatGPT can give a random answer when he doesn't know and not just say, I don't know, at the end of the day, an AI is programmed to do what he sees as most amount of successes. And when he learns from the internet, and it will be what he learns from the internet because that's what the best politicians do, the ones that succeed the most and are most elected, probably he's going to answer and maybe lie, and there's really no way to actually monitor it more than you can monitor a regular politician just by checking what he's doing. Also, we hear that city council members aren't good enough because they're biased, they have personal things in it. Well, first of all, the AI learns from a certain data set, again, which is probably the internet, where certain things are talked about more, I don't know, minorities in that town are talked about less. It's gonna have biases anyway because of just like the information it is exposed to, but those biases will be much less available for the public to actually see. Moving on to my point. So, why AI is not adaptive enough? Let's talk about how does AI learn, right? AI learns from billions and billions of data points. To learn to talk, for example, ChatGPT needed to literally scroll pretty much the whole internet, when we as humans only need like a few years of experience and a really low amount of words to actually understand speech. So in order to change, it needs a really large amount of data. Right? When it learns off of billions of data points and it already has some sort of patterns that it goes by, to actually change those patterns to something significantly different, it's not enough to make one mistake, two mistakes. It needs to get a lot of feedback, right? Millions of times, or at least a couple of thousand times of feedback that he did a mistake, that he failed, that he did something wrong. Now, how does that theoretical notion actually look in real life when governing and making decisions that affect people's life directly? First of all, even when there isn't a huge change, right? When we're not talking about COVID-19 hitting, hint for what is going to come, but like generally speaking, when there's something wrong, some sort of miscalculation, a mistake, right? It will only be fixed after countless of human victims, right? The AI will even notice it only after it has done a couple of mistakes, maybe took too much taxes from people in a way that they don't see, I don't know, did wrong orders. Only when those mistakes are going to really pile up will anyone notice anything, just because unlike a human who, for example, will immediately, I don't know, see that he did something wrong because it's not only one data set out of 1,000 for him, the AI will need lots of mistakes to actually realize something. But what's the more important point? Again, we're talking about decision making actually being different, especially in times of uncertainty. And when we're talking about governing, those are the points that governments and city council have the most effect and power. What happens when there are huge changes? For example, COVID-19, a war breaks, climate crisis that was never precedented before, right? All of the things that are pretty much probably going to happen, at least to some extent, in our future. They won't know what to do, right? The AI, it won't know what to do. More correctly, it will make decisions based on the data set that was before, based on the reality which is no longer correct and which is no longer what we need to actually handle the situation. And the AI won't notice or change its way until millions of mistakes or failures actually happen, which, if we're talking about COVID, can be actually loss of lives, or maybe in a more, I don't know, day-to-day basis, accidentally making decisions that make people lose their home or lose their job or just get to a worse economic status. Before I move on, yes, first house.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks. The average 70-year-old politician doesn't have to know how to use a phone, let alone adapt quickly. And AI can emphasize the newest data, appreciate exponentials in COVID, and predict climate change years in advance.
Okay, great. I'm just getting to my point, why it is not true for humans. Thank you for whatever. Okay, so why is it not true for humans? First of all, even if we're 70 years old, okay, we aren't as locked to specific patterns as AI, where we simply have, I don't know, a larger brain plasticity. We can learn from fewer examples, because even 70 years of experience is a way smaller data set than billions of data points, right? Still, everything that we experience is way bigger for us. First, we just learn from less mistakes, right? I don't need to get burned twice to learn not to touch something again, even if for all of my life I touched it and everything was okay, because I have emotional value that heightens mistakes, which doesn't happen to the AI, who again changes its way only after a lot of trial and error, which we just cannot afford an actual human being. 3, we have the ability to recognize important mistakes. What do I mean by important mistakes? For an AI, one wrong data set or mistake is the same, right? It holds the same weight as a million of correct trials for a human, having one person die or one person lose their home on my watch suddenly will immediately make me rethink and will make me notice it a lot sooner and make me change my ways a lot sooner, even if I'm 80 years old, because I have this emotional connection. And fourth, sometimes the AI won't even realize he's making a mistake because a mistake for him is only failure in a set parameter which may not even be relevant in his new reality. So for all of those reasons, obviously don't choose AI and oppose.
Three main clashes in this debate. We have Skynet, we have then efficacy, and we have representativity. We're going to win the two last ones. We're going to tackle the Skynet case from both oppositions and then win the debate. Let's talk about what oppositions are trying to sell you. How this AI is going to be hackable by internet, despite OG saying to you, no, it's not on the internet. The people are going to write the code and mess with it, despite people actually messing with code being treason, right? Because when people mess with our prime minister, it's treason. They did shoot him some years ago. We think that actually all those effects that oppositions try to sell you are kind of symmetric in some sense, right? Populism. The computer doesn't care what people want, it does what it wants. Like, what does that sound to you? It sounds to me like a politician in a world we live in, right? A lot of politicians that sell to the people, yes, we're representing you, and in years of years are saying, no, the country should burn and we'll go. Yes, we think like no comparative was actually presented to us. This apart from politicians live in the place that they live in or live in the country or city that they live in, we think this is just not a good accountability mechanism for that, right? Because they can live in a house, not get out of the house. They have a private driver. They don't have to engage with the people. They just have to be re-elected as well the same way computer has to get re-elected. But secondly, Supreme Court is still here. It can, as government says, right, it can block all those minority hurting scenarios of the computer trying to hang all the gingies or something like that. We think closing opposition telling you it learns from mistakes slowly. We think this is symmetric to politicians. Politicians don't learn from one mistake. They actually need the people to get to them, to hear to them. They never prove to us why politicians are better at learning quickly. But secondly, we think they say to you, it's likely that they say to you, in emergency, the AI would not know what to do. We think that it's very likely that an AI would have an emergency protocol based on all emergencies in the past, on how we reacted to COVID, on how we reacted to flu, I don't know, tsunamis, whatever, from all the world. We think it'll be much, much better at reacting to emergencies because it can learn from emergencies around the world, while politicians only experience one or two emergencies in their lives. But the most important rebuttal to the Skynet case is thus. Oh wait, let's do the rich people because Rina did it quite well, right? Oppositions tell us rich people are gonna run the AI. We think rich people actually run politicians today, right? You have to schmooze with them. You have to be elite. You have to have the connections. You have to raise money for that. You have to be able to win in primaries. Therefore, you have to be strong in the center of the or in the party. We think you can't really do it without the ties, without getting the money from rich people. You can't actually grow from the grass. And we think this is not a thing that that opposition analyzes to us because they don't dare give us a comparative, because the comparative is not really better. But the most important rebuttal to the Skynet case now, obviously, today there is a huge rise in regulation, in research about AI, in boundaries we put on AI. People understand that when ChatGPT is out. So we think in 5 years, the regulations on AI are likely to be much more harsh than today. They're likely to, I don't know, Asimov predicted that 50 years ago about the rules of robotics and how a robot can kill a person. We think it is much likely that tomorrow, before we give the reins of power to an AI, we would hard code you should prioritize human lives over things and not just kill humans for fun or something like that, right? Yes, governments are not stupid, right? We don't we don't want to put ChatGPT in control of the world. We think some adjustments have to be made, but those adjustments mean that the AI is enough not to be dangerous, is enough to be actually as good as politicians are, which is not very good, but still not horrible. But what is the most important delta in this debate, right? Because OG talks to us about a democracy at large and about Knesset and about stuff like that. But we think that they don't actually present to us with a huge problem like Rina does. Rina says there is a crucial problem in our democracy today. People are not represented in the place that affects them the most. If I need a bus line change, I'm walking in heat for a month, and that affects my life, that affects my health. If I need more money for the youth center near my house, I need to compete with 5 other youth centers or 5 other projects on the attention of some board or volunteers, people in the city council. We think it's just not getting done, and this is hurting representativity in much more than politicians are hurting representativity, and it's hurting efficacy much more than in huge politicians. We'll get to that in a minute, but first, yes.
The politician has his family here. He does not want to be remembered as the person who fucked up the economy. Sometimes he actually cares about this country, and the people who use the buses are the minority who they won't listen to.
Sorry, too quick for me to understand, but we think that politicians actually, as well as politicians don't want to screw up the econ, if screwing up the econ would hurt people, the AI is likely not to screw up the econ, right? Because he is coded to govern. But let's talk about we think there is an accountability mechanism, in getting voted again, elected again, if you say he wants to get elected again, so he will not screw everything up, but then again, act better, right? What is the problem today? The problem today is that we have, why are city councils much more change in this motion than big politics? On 2 main levels. First, on the efficacy, right? Because in the state politics, we do have the geniuses who rise to the top. The ones in the country who are best at thinking, best at analyzing, the best researchers to give us results, the best experts to give us analysis, right? We think we have peak performance on how people can actually analyze there. We think that the delta that OG shows you is not that big on that, right? We think they say it's better to know where to put the hospital, but they agree that everyone knows that we needed hospital there. No, where the problem is when the city council are swamped, right? Because they're meeting once a week, because they volunteer to do it, they don't get money to do it. They have other problems in the world, biases, they actually touch their ability to manage, right? Because if minister is on 100 schools, it's not like if I'm a personally on that. So my biases don't let me govern. Therefore, for all those reasons, propose.
I feel a bit like Rina in psychological debates in the finals. Let's talk what we have in this debate. We have a few questions that we think are important. We think that we have dealing with new decisions in the process decision making. We think we have common decisions, and we think we are talking also about biases and things like that. We will fuck the representativity of whatever CG tells us. We think that is much less important than actual human lives and helping others. Because the public is stupid or whatever. Let's talk about a bit of rebelling. So what did we get? We get something about emergency protocol or things like that the AI will follow. We think that if something that now happens is actually different than whatever we see around the world, if it's another pandemic which is different from other things, we think that the way to deal with it is also different, meaning that it doesn't help us that we have data set that is not relevant to this case. We cannot look at actually all the data sets that are relevant. We also get a very important thing that I will now note between AI and human. We think that it is the risk taking. That means that because humans know that they might be wrong, that decisions they are making they are not 100% sure of, that means they will not hurry to make a decision that might have a great risk behind it. What that means? That means that in order to not take a risk for an all-out war, if I have Taiwan join NATO or something like that, I will probably not do that. We think that the AI thinks about this decision, thinks that it is the right decision, and does not take does not care about the risk, does not even calculate it if it's a new decision and things like that. So we think that is a very big difference between an AI and a human being that will help solve a lot of the problems that we want to solve. Let's talk about dealing with new decision.
We think that a lot of the AI mistakes can only be seen years later. That means that I cannot know if that AI did something wrong. Now what OG tells us about that is that we can supervise that. Let's get into it. Obviously, OG talks about a day where this AI will be convincing enough in order for them to actually run for office, even if it's a mayoral level or things like that, and win. Win in a world where most probably are scared of new technology, where most people, and things like that. Now, OG thinks that asking him to explain its decision will be a good protocol to see if it's biased or not, to see why he thinks those things, and it is equivalent to open source, which you said is obviously not in this debate. Now, that is a very weird take, considering they tell us for this AI to actually run for office, it probably needs to be pretty persuasive, meaning his explanation for his wrong decision will be exceptionally convincing. What does that mean? When the, and then they say that, but we have AIs on both sides, so they can supervise each other and things like that. They can argue. That's probably the scariest thing I've ever heard, right? You're talking about a machine that knows the right answers, and then it argues with itself on both sides. But other than that, we think that F2I argues with each other. It doesn't mean actually what is the right decision, but how good they can convince the people. Meaning actually making sure that the decision is good or bad is impossible on their side. And the way that the AI will be programmed to what's right and wrong obviously doesn't have meaning when it comes to these new decisions that we're talking about, because we do not have the answer to tell us in the test programming that we do. Now we think that in this new decision, which we never seen before. And we think that if we are debaters, we probably know that it's very easy to convince something that is not true, meaning the fact that it ran for office and actually won, or it convinced its own developer on a new thing or things like that, doesn't mean that that thing is actually true, and we think that is not a good way to actually supervise him. It's a horrible way. We think that we win because these odd or uncommon decisions aren't really that odd or uncommon. Why? Because there's so many variables, right? The AI might know how to solve a war when there's a 22% chance of a nuclear war, but what about a 23% chance? We think that in that case, he actually uses what he thought about things before, and that may not be accurate. Have you ever asked the ChatGPT to answer a question which you don't, which he doesn't know the answer to? He just completely says it, no, he just says the answer and doesn't even care if it's right or wrong very convincingly. We think that the AI that we have will actually do that more convincingly and not will actually find the right or wrong ways. Wow, 4 POIs. Second.
As a democracy, we care most about legitimacy to rule. City councilors barely have legitimacy because they don't actually represent us. It is essential to replace them for proper democratic representation.
Okay, we think that if we show you that a mistake may lead to kill people and things like that, we're fine with living in a not completely functional democracy or just a democracy that we have right now. Horrible, right? Okay, we think that in the end of the day, when we ask ourselves how common these hard decisions are, it's actually all the time, exactly because we cannot program from the start for every single thing that may happen. Let's talk now about dealing with common problems. What I got from OG is that tell us that this knowledge will really help because more info and answers and things like that. Because of their own analysis about competition to use AI between countries and things like that, we think that the comparative is very likely to be a representative that will use AI to win, like we got from from the beginning in daily common decision, and we get all the perks of the daily common decisions that are good on our side as well. What we don't get is those hard decisions. Now let's talk about biases. Because OG tells us, oh, but we have biases today that politicians and people have. Where do you think the AI gets its data, right? Because the answer is obviously going to be from the internet, which is probably the biggest data set that we can give this AI. Meaning that we have biases, any biases that we have today will probably stay on that AI. That means that the programmer or things like that told the AI what is right or wrong probably also has the same biases and things like that. We think that we are above OO exactly because when they talk about all those things like having corruption and things like that, those are indeed things that can happen in both sides. That means even hacking or something that may seem to be different, we think that probably if our hospitals are working on computers, we're not that bad with protecting our computers. We think we show you the biggest delta in this debate. Proud to oppose.